In Spartan society, Helots were slaves who lived in the region of Laconia, nearby the Spartan capital. They were forced to wear dogskin caps and wrap themselves in skin to display their social status. It is likely that the Helots were the original inhabitants of Laconia, who were eventually put into slavery after the conquest of their land by the Dorians in the 8th century BC. The Dorians, a major early Greek civilization, established the cities of Sparta, Argos and Corinth, and in the 8th century BC, the newly formed Spartans went to war with the Messenians, a group to Sparta's west. Following their success, the Messenians were instated as Helots and were now required to serve the Spartan state. Helots were bound to the soil and their masters could not free them nor sell them. There was no social mobility for the Helots, and they were to remain as slaves for their entire livelihoods. However, some Helots were servants to young Spartans during their agoge, the Spartan education and training system. In some rare circumstances, Helots could become artisans or tradesmen and contribute to the Spartan economy. Regardless, a Helot's life was tough and grueling. Helots had limited rights to own property, and landowners would even own them to farm. As a result, the Helots were required to pay their masters a fixed portion of the produce of their land. The only time Helots were allowed to leave their communities was for religious ceremonies. Throughout Spartan history, the Spartans severely mistreated the Helots. The Spartans would endanger the Helots by forcing them to drink pure wine, and once drunk, the Spartans embarrassed them and forced them to dance and sing ridiculous songs. The Spartans did this to educate the youth on drunkenness and its effect on human beings. The gross mistreatment of Helots encouraged Spartans to contain them, fearing a revolt from Spartan rule. Ephors, old Spartan magistrates, would declare war on the Helots once a year in an attempt to control the population and the possibility of civil unrest. The Spartans believed that the annual beating of the Helots would remind them that they were slaves. The Spartans also had a secret police called the Crypteia, whose job it was to patrol the Laconian countryside and put to death any supposedly dangerous Helots. The Spartans were so cautious of Helot revolt that it was a major reason for their famous conservative and protectionist foreign policy. Helot revolt was a key reason why Spartans had two kings, one to fight on campaigns and the other to defend the city. The Spartans were so fearful of Helot revolt because it is likely that the Helots outnumbered the Spartans from 7 to 1. When the Spartans were at war, Helots would serve as light armed troops for their masters. The Helots were present in the Battle of Thermopylae and at the Battle of Plataea, two military campaigns during the Persian Wars against the Persian Empire. In naval battles, the Helots were required to act as rowers for large vessels. In the year 464 BC, Sparta suffered an earthquake causing thousands of casualties and the destruction of many of its buildings. The Helots took advantage of this disruption to the Spartans and revolted against Spartan rule. During the revolt, the Helots decided to take a stronghold on Mount Ithome, and after 10 years of fighting, the Spartans succeeded and the Helots surrendered. The Messenian Helots were lost to Sparta when Epaminondas, the Theban general, liberated Messenia in 370 BC. However, the Helot system continued in Laconia until the 2nd century BC.